Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome. In this video, we are going to look at citric acid cycle. We are going to look at citric acid cycle. So, of course, as I said in this video, we are going to look at the concept of citric acid cycle. So let me start by asking a question. Please, can you see the board and can you also hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, so good evening, Victoria. You are welcome. So please, can you see the board clearly and can you also hear me at the same time? Can you hear me and can you see the board? So is the board clear? Yes, Victoria, is the board clear? Okay. Okay, the board is not clear. So it means you cannot see this. Please, can you see this? What is showing double? Do you mean the board or what? Double. Hello, can you see the board now very well? Hello, can you see the board very well now? Okay, so excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think you should not forget that I told you today we are going to look at the concept of cellular respiration. So, okay, specifically citric acid cycle. But I want to inform you that cellular respiration generally involve four major steps. And before that, what is cellular respiration? Cellular respiration is actually breaking down of glucose to produce uh, carbon dioxide and water, but depend on the types of the cellular respiration. Remember, we have two types of respiration. We have aerobic, we have aerobic respiration. That is number one, and then we have anaerobic. We have anaerobic respiration. So what is respiration in a simple term? When we said respiration, it means it is actually breaking down of glucose. It is breaking down of glucose to produce carbon dioxide to produce carbon dioxide plus energy. So that is cellular respiration. Is the breaking down of carbon dioxide, sorry, the breaking down of glucose to produce carbon dioxide and energy, but it depends on the types of the respiration. So this cellular respiration is taking place in 4 steps. So the first step of cellular respiration is number one. There are 4 stages. There are 4 stages of cellular respiration. So we are starting with the first one, although we have done that one already. So number one, we have glycolysis. Glycolysis. That is the first step of cellular respiration. So don't forget, I told you that we have 4 stages of cellular respiration. So the first one is glycolysis, and then the second one is, don't forget, actually in glycolysis, glycolysis is started from a breaking down of glucose to break down and generate pyruvate. Pyruvate. That is the first stage of cellular respiration. And then apart from uh, glycolysis, the next one is the formation of acetyl-CoA from pyruvate. Formation of acetyl-CoA from pyruvate. So this is also, already we have discussed glycolysis in our last class, but in today's class, we are going to look at the formation of acetyl-CoA from pyruvate. And then the second one is, sorry, the third one is Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle. So Krebs cycle is the same thing as citric acid cycle. Krebs cycle is the same thing as citric acid cycle. And then the last one, which is number 4, that is the post stage of cellular respiration, is electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. Electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. So ladies and gentlemen, these are the 4 stages of cellular respiration. We have 4 stages of cellular respiration. Number 1, we have glycolysis, which is part of what we discussed last time. And then the second one, we have formation of acetyl-CoA from pyruvate. And then 2, we have Krebs cycle. And then number 4, we have electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. So these are the 4 stages of cellular respiration. Please, do you understand? Is that clear? Is that clear? Please, do you understand before we proceed? Because these are the basics. Remember, I told you cellular respiration is the breaking down of glucose to produce carbon dioxide and energy. But this cellular respiration is divided into two. We have 2 types of cellular respiration. We have aerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration, it means it occurs in the presence of oxygen. It occurs in the presence of oxygen. While anaerobic respiration, it occurs in the absent, that is minus, that is no oxygen. So that is the difference between cellular aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration, it occurs in the presence of oxygen, while anaerobic respiration, it occurs in the absence of oxygen. But I want you to understand glycolysis, 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 it occurs, it occurs both in a cell where there is oxygen or there is no oxygen. So it occurs both in the absence or presence of oxygen. So that is what I want you to understand. So in a cellular respiration, it occurs both in the presence and in the absence of oxygen. So glycolysis can occur both in anaerobic stage and aerobic stage. That is what I want you to understand. Please, is that clear? Mom, I mean, Dati, do you understand? Victoria, do you understand? Please, do you understand? So briefly, I want to tell you what happened during anaerobic glycolysis. During anaerobic glycolysis, there are many things that occur. Like, for example, remember in the glycolysis, what is the end product of glycolysis? What do we generate at the end of glycolysis? Pyruvate. Pyruvate. So in the absence of oxygen, that is in under anaerobic stage, under anaerobic, in the absence of oxygen, this pyruvate in glycolysis will be converted into, it is actually a reversible reaction. So the pyruvate will be converted into lactates, using an enzyme called lactate dehydrogenase. Dehydrogenase, that is the name of the enzyme, as you can see. So in the absence of oxygen, the pyruvate will be converted into lactate. So that is what happened during anaerobic respiration. That is in the absence of oxygen. The pyruvate will be converted into lactate. So in a cell where there is no oxygen or no mitochondria, remember, aerobic respiration, that is the cellular respiration in the presence of oxygen, it occurs in the mitochondria. So in a cell where there is no mitochondria, look at it, in a cell where there is no mitochondria, these are the conditions I'm writing down. What happens in a cell where there is no mitochondria? In a cell where there is no mitochondria, and then 2, no oxygen. So in a cell where there is no mitochondria, like red blood cells, it doesn't have mitochondria. Second, no oxygen. Pyruvate usually converted to lactate. For those of you that watch my video on glycolysis and cancer, what happened to the cancer cells? So generally in the case of cancer cells have defective mitochondria. Cancer cells have what? They have defective mitochondria. So that is why, because cancer cells have defective mitochondria, so it only depends on glycolysis for energy generation. Please, do you understand? In a cell where there is no mitochondria, or a cell that have defective mitochondria in the case of cancer cells, or no oxygen, pyruvate will be converted into lactate. So that is where the major nutrient that is utilized by the cancer cell, is lactate. So if you can be able to stop glycolysis in cancer cells, so it means that definitely you can cure cancer, because the energy of cancer cells as well as the nutrient of the cancer cells depend on the glycolysis, because they have defective mitochondria. So therefore they cannot undergo aerobic respiration. So therefore, since they cannot undergo aerobic respiration, so they will only depend on glycolysis to generate lactate as nutrient and ATP. So that is why if you can stop glycolysis in cancer, So it means that you can control cancer. Go and watch my video on glycolysis and cancer. You'll see how some of the drugs are developed to target or to stop cancer cells. Please, my friends, is that clear? Is that clear? Do you understand? If you understand, then we are now going to move to the aerobic respiration, which is specifically citric acid cycle. That is the topic that we are going to look at for today. Okay, thank you very much. So now, the next thing is to look at this, is to look at the Krebs cycle. So now the first question, how citric acid cycle occur? So the major fuel source, the major fuel molecules that is required by cancer cell is pyruvate. Pyruvate. Although directly it's not the pyruvate, rather it is acetyl-CoA. So acetyl-CoA is the starting material. Acetyl-CoA is a starting material of citric acid cycle. So for citric acid cycle to occur, you need acetyl-CoA. So now, please, I want to ask you some question. Who can tell me what are the sources of acetyl-CoA? Where and where do you think we can get acetyl-CoA? So as I said, for citric acid cycle to occur, there are criteria. There are criteria that you require. There are some certain things that you need for the citric acid cycle to occur. Number one, the cell must have mitochondria. Must have mitochondria. That is number one. For citric acid cycle to occur, you need mitochondria. That is first. Second, you need oxygen. You need oxygen. And then number three, you need acetyl-CoA. So you see, do you understand? We are starting at this point. Number one, for citric acid cycle to occur, there are three things that you need. Number one, the cells must have mitochondria. Second, there must be oxygen. And then three, there must be acetyl-CoA. Is that clear? Is that clear? Okay. So as I said, for citric acid cycle to occur, first there must be mitochondria. That is number one. And then second, there must be oxygen and there must be acetyl-CoA. So you need the following. Then what next? So now the question is, how do we get this acetyl-CoA? So we have different sources of acetyl-CoA. Who can tell me? Where and where do you think we can get acetyl-CoA? I think one of it we can get acetyl-CoA from, as you can see from here, we can get acetyl-CoA from pyruvate. So I'm now talking about the sources of acetyl-CoA. The sources of acetyl-CoA, and number one is pyruvate. And then another sources of acetyl-CoA, we can also get acetyl-CoA from beta oxidation of fatty acid. Beta oxidation of Fe. Fe means fatty acid. So we can get it from beta oxidation of fatty fatty acids. You can get it from beta oxidation of fatty acid. Then what is another sources of this acetyl CoA? Then we have number 3. We can also get it from ketone bodies. Ketone bodies. So I think briefly, ladies and gentlemen, you can see that this acetyl CoA has different sources. We can get it from beta oxidation, we can get it from ketone, we can get it from pyruvate. So, but this beta oxidation usually occur in the mitochondrial matrix. Ketone bodies can also be generated in the mitochondrial matrix. Okay, so for this one, for that is number 3, we have ketone bodies. So you can get it from ketone bodies. Okay, then what next? So these are the sources of acetyl CoA. You can generate all this from, so you can generate acetyl CoA from these sources. But now remember, I want to ask you one question. Where glycolysis takes place? Where glycolysis takes place in a cell? Where glycolysis takes place in a cell? Yes. No, glycolysis is not taking place in the mitochondria, Victoria. Glycolysis is taking place in the cytosol. Glycolysis, so when you have glucose in cytosol, glucose will break down to produce two molecules of pyruvate. So glycolysis takes place in the cytosol. But as I told you, citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle is taking place in the mitochondria. So now the question is, you have pyruvate because this glycolysis is taking place in the cytosols and you generate two molecules of pyruvate there. So now the question is, if you have glycolysis in the cytosol and you generate pyruvate in the cytosol, so how this pyruvate get itself into mitochondria for citric acid cycle to take place? So of course we have mitochondria. So this is the mitochondria, and mitochondria is made of course, is made of outer membrane and inner membrane. So first, this pyruvate will transport itself from the cytosol to the outer mitochondria. The pyruvate generated in the cytosol, because citric acid cycle is taking place in the mitochondria, so the pyruvate must transport themselves from the cytosol to the mitochondrial matrix. But before it gets itself directly to the mitochondrial matrix, the pyruvate will first transport to the outer mitochondrial membrane. And how does it actually get into the outer mitochondrial matrix? So it uses what you call a passive transport. Passive transport via voltage dependent ion channel via voltage dependent ion or anion channel. So you see, pyruvate transport itself from the cytosol, get it please very well, from the cytosols to outer, this is the outer mitochondria. So get it. So from the outer from the cytosol, these two molecules of pyruvate will transport themselves from the outer mitochondria, from the cytosols to outer mitochondria via a by passive transport via a voltage and ion channel. So therefore, the pyruvate will find itself at the outer mitochondria. So from this outer mitochondria, what happened next? Then there is what you call mitochondrial carrier protein, another transporter. Mitochondrial carrier protein. So we have 1 and 2 mitochondrial. We have mitochondrial carrier protein 1 and mitochondrial carrier protein 2, which transport these two molecules of pyruvate from the outer mitochondrial membrane into the mitochondrial matrix. Mitochondrial matrix. So that is what I want you to understand. So first, the pyruvates are generated, or the pyruvate is generated in the outer mitochondria. So it's generated from pyruvate, then it will now transport itself to the outer mitochondria. And once that happens, from the outer mitochondria, it will transport itself to the mitochondrial matrix using mitochondrial carrier protein 1 and 2. So is that clear? So after that, you have your pyruvate in the mitochondrial matrix. Then the next thing is the conversion of pyruvate or formation of acetyl-CoA from pyruvate. The second one is the formation So now you have your pyruvate in the mitochondrial matrix after all the transportation from the cytosols to outer mitochondria, then to mitochondrial matrix. So the next thing is that, okay, remember I told you that the starting material for citric acid cycle is pyruvate. So is acetyl-CoA. So how do we generate this acetyl-CoA from pyruvate? There is an enzyme which converts these two molecules of pyruvate into two molecules of acetyl-CoA. Remember, at the end of glycolysis, two molecules of pyruvate are generated. So then these two molecules of pyruvate will be converted into two molecules of acetyl-CoA using an enzyme called pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. Pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. That is the name of the enzymes. So whenever we said pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, it means that it encompasses other enzymes under it. It is complex, it means that it contains so many other enzymes. That is why it is called complex. And this complex comprises of 3 enzymes, E1, E2, and E3. The E1, we have pyruvate dehydrogenase, that is the first one, dehydrogenase. And then the second one is pyruvate transacetylase. Acetylase. And then number 3, who can tell me the remaining one? Because I know that you watched the video. What is the name of the third enzymes in this complex? And it requires 5 coenzymes. It requires 5 coenzymes. We have coenzyme A. Coenzymes A. We have lipoids. It requires lipoids. It also requires FAD plus. It requires NAD plus. Hello. Following. Hello, are you following?